Welcome to another CCNA lab demonstration. In this lab assignment, we will configure SSH on a router and a switch. In this particular lab, you will not be provided with a pre-configured packet tracer file. Instead, you will be provided with a set of instructions like you see on the left-hand side of your screen. In this Word document, we have a title. It says configure SSH on a router and a switch. So we have an idea what we will be doing. So we are configuring SSH on a router and a switch on our packet tracer file. On part 1, it says download the packet tracer simulation program from the Cisco website, install the packet tracer and follow the instruction provided here to complete this lab. On part 2, it clearly states you will not be provided with a pre-configured packet tracer file and therefore follow the instructions to make this lab work. In other words, you will only be provided with this instruction set for the lab by your instructor or the CCNA course administrator. You will still just open your Cisco Packet Tracer software and then start following the instructions provided to you. On point number 1 under part 2, it says create a network topology with a generic PC, a 2950-24 switch and a 2911 router. It is very important that you read these instructions carefully. So they're asking us to use a generic PC. So let's go to our Cisco Packet Tracer, go to end devices. So we're just gonna throw in the generic PC. And it says a 2950-24 switch. You need to make sure that you pick that particular switch or you will lose points. So make sure you go to your Cisco Packet Tracer, network devices, switches, and we are looking for 2950-24. That's this guy, 29-24, and put it in here. So 2950-24. And it says the router is 2911. So right here, the instructions say 2911. So if I go to the routers and if I go and find the 2911, and that looks like this guy, 2911, and we're going to add that into our lab space. And on point number 2, it says connect the devices in this order: PC, switch, router, using appropriate cables. So they don't even tell you what cables to use. You need to make sure what cables you need to use. And it says the router interface G00 should be connected to switch interface FE01 and the PC must be connected to FE02 interface of the switch. In other words, it even tells you exactly how they want you to configure this lab. Even though they didn't give you a pre-configured lab, you are going to configure yourself, right? So we have these items now pulled up on our lab space. I'm going to go to connections right here. And I know I need straight through cables between PC and the switch and the router. So I'm going to click on straight through. And it says the router G00 interface, switch FE01 interface. So I'm going to click on the router, click gigabit Ethernet 00. That is G00. And then in here on the switch, we need to make sure we pick fast Ethernet 01 and that connection is done. And the next straight through cable, what we're going to do is for the switch, it's going to be FE02. So it's fast Ethernet 02. And on the PC, it does not tell you what Ethernet port to use. The reason for that is the generic PCs on Cisco Packet Tracer comes with one NIC card and one NIC interface. That is fast Ethernet 0. And that's the one we're going to pick. So this is pretty much our network. So we follow the instructions and we complete our part 2. We create the network topology with generic PC, the switch 2950-24 and router 2911, and we connected them with the appropriate cables. And then we make sure that the connections are on correct ports as required by this particular lab. So let's go to part 3. It says configure SSH on both the router and the switch using appropriate commands. you must also adhere to the following instructions. Router hostname is R1, switch hostname SW1. Both router and the switch must have a banner, the message of the day banner, and it has to be meaningful. So it doesn't have a particular banner that you need to use for this particular lab assignment, but it has to be meaningful. Use your first name as the domain name. See, sometimes some students may lose points because they don't read carefully. So the domain name is not some random name. It needs to be your first name. This is also a trick used by CCNA lab instructors so that you won't end up sharing your labs with your partners or peers, right? So you create your own lab. So you need to make sure that you use your name as your domain name. All password must be Cisco. All password must be encrypted. RSA keys must be set to 1024-bit. SSH connection must use version 2, and the network address map should be like this based on the table provided here. And finally, on part 4, it tells you how you should be submitting, and it also tells you that you should ping and make sure that all the connections, everything are working, and then once connection is done, it tells you how to submit the lab. So but we are not interested in part 4. We are interested in part pretty much 2 and 3, right? So we are done part 2. So let's go ahead and create these SSH connections on our router and the switch. So we are going to repeat the same process for both switch and the router. However, please note the SSH configuration on a switch is slightly different at the near the end compared to a router, and you will see that during this lab assignment demonstration. So first thing first, I have PC 0, switch 0, and router 0. I know this is not that important, but I'm going to change these display labels so I don't get confused with what I need to do here and which device that I'm working on. So I'm going to click on the switch 0 label. I'm going to put it SW1 because that's what it says the host name should be. And the R1, I'm going to double click and I'm going to say R1. You don't need to do that because they didn't ask you to do that here, but it is for my own purpose. The next thing is I have a couple of ways of configuring this. One is that I can click on this and go to CLI and start configuring here. I do not recommend that. Instead, what I will do, I will use a console cable. I will click on this. I will go to the cables from the bottom here. Click on console right here. And I click on the PC. And then I'm going to pick RS323, which is the console cable. And I'm going to connect that to the console cable of the router, which is the console cable right here. So why am I doing this? Because in a real world, you will be using a console cable and you must have physical access to your router initially before you configure your SSH remote access. And this is how you will be working in a real world scenario. So I will be using console cable between PC and the router, and next I will be using console cable between the PC and the switch to configure the SSH on this router and the switch. So now the console cable is connected. I'm going to double click on the device PC0. So I'm working on this PC0, but I'm going to connect to this router through the console cable. So I'm going to go to desktop and then I will go to terminal and I'm going to click OK. As you can see, I am inside now the router. This is the router itself, this is the Cisco iOS contained in this particular router, and I'm connected through this console cable. So again, I'm using the PC0 to access the router, and that's what I see on this screen. So the router just boot up. It asks you, would you like to enter the initial configuration? I'm going to go no, press enter. And press enter again, and now I am inside that router. So given the instructions on the left hand side, you can read these instructions anytime you like, because it's always going to show up on the left hand side of this video. I'm going to go ahead and start working on this lab and start creating these SSH connections. So on the router, the first thing I need to do is to change the host name. So first I'm going to go enable. So I can go en stab enable, or I can go just en and enter. And then we're going to do so by doing that, I entered the privilege executive mode. Then we're going to go global configuration mode. It's config t. That's the global configuration mode. And I'm going to change the host name. So host name, I can either go ho, or I can go like this, host name, and then it's going to go r1, enter. So now the host name has changed. It says r1 right here. That's the host name for this router, right? So everything we are doing right now, we are in this router now. So we are doing this through the console cable for this router, right? So let's get this thing going. So we have the host name done. And the next thing we will do is we'll create the banner. So banner motd, and I'm gonna say net IT geek r1, and that's it. So that's my banner, because both are supposed to have a banner. It just had to be meaningful. Then we need to configure the interface. Now on this table, it tells you what the router interface is supposed to be. So router interface G00, where that cable is connected to the switch, should have IP address 192.168.1.1 with the subnet mask 255.255.255.0. So to do that, I will go int G00. So now I'm inside that interface. IPADDR, which is basically stand for IP address. If I tab, it will tell you the complete command. So I just put IPADDR and put tab the complete command. It's 192.168.1.1 and it's 255.255.255.0. That's a subnet mask, and press enter. And the next command we need to do is no shut. The reason for that is right now there is no connection right here, but when you enter no shut, and if I press enter here, what that will do, that will enable that connection. See how it now have all greened out. So it tells you on the CLI that the gigabit interface has the state has changed to up, and everything turned green here. So it turns green here. So that's what I did. So I just gave the IP address and I make sure it is up. Then I'm going to exit out of that. So I'm exit out of the interface. The next thing what I'm going to do is put the domain. So I'm going to put IP domain name. Now it says the domain name, use your first name as the domain name. So the domain name going to be here Sanuja, and press enter. And the username, it doesn't tell you what username to use. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use my name as the username. So make sure you follow the instructions, but in here username it doesn't tell you. So I'm going to use username Sanuja, and we're going to go secret Cisco. What secret is doing is, so the Sanuja is the username and the secret gonna encrypt the password Cisco. We're gonna have Cisco as the password, but the password will be encrypted as per instructions here. So that's why username Sanuja secret, and we're gonna press enter, and now that is done. And then the next thing we need to do, we need to make sure this is enabled. So what we're gonna do is enable secret Cisco and press enter. And now you know that part is done. Next thing we need to do is the line consoles. So we need to make sure that the line console also have the password included. So we're going to go line console 0. That's the main line console, and we're going to go password Cisco enter. Then I'm going to go login and exit. So what that has done is it gives the line console the same password, the Cisco password the lab is asking us to use. However, the line console password doesn't have that secret. Notice that. So that means it is not encrypted right now. But the lab instruction says all passwords must be encrypted. So what we need to do here right now is we need to do the service password encryption. So we're going to go service password encryption, enter. So now what's going to happen is every password on this configuration will be encrypted. The next thing we need to do is the crypto. So we're going to go crypto key generate. What we're going to do is RSA, right? Because it tells you to use RSA on point number 7 right here on part 3, and press enter. And it's going to ask you how many bits in the modules should be used. So 512 module, right? Modulus is 512, and it tells you that we need to use 1024. Higher the bits, more encrypted it's going to be. You can think of that way. I know it's not a really good way to explain it, but for most students, higher the bits, you know, that's what you need to remember. It's going to be more encrypted in a way. So it tells you 1024. Press enter, and it gives generating 1024 bit RSA key. Keys will be non-exportable, and click OK, and it says OK, and that's it. So I just created that. Then I'm going to do the next step of this is basically to make sure that we use the SSH connection that is version 2. Why? Because it tells you to. So IP SSH version, and it shows as version 1.99 is enabled, but we can do version 2, enter. You know, it's gonna be you know, the version 2 now enabled. So this is the command for that, version 2, IP SSH version 2. If you go back and type version and press enter, obviously it's going to tell as incomplete command, but what we know, because we enter IP SSH version 2, we know it has been enabled. Now the next thing is we need to allow connections to the router via virtual lines. So now, even though this port is open, now everything is green after we do all of this work, even though links are up, we need to allow the virtual lines. To do that, line VTY 015, that's all the virtual lines. Press enter. Now we are inside configuration for those line VTYs, and we're going to go transport input SSH, enter, logging local. Now why are we using logging local here? Because logging local will allow you to use a username and a password. So that's why we are using logging local. So we're going to do logging local. If you put just logging instead of logging local, it's just gonna, it doesn't give you the option to use a username, only the password. So that's why we're going to use logging local. And what we need to do now is basically for this particular router is that's it. That's all what we need to do for now. We set up the SSH connections for this router and it's done, and all the configurations are here. Now because we are on a Cisco Packet Tracer, you can simply save this Packet Tracer file. You can go ahead and type save, and you can pretty much call it whatever, lab2, and you can just save it. However, that if you are on a a real world scenario, you remember you need to save the configuration to the router, but you don't need to do that. You don't need to do the copy running config, any of those commands. We can simply stop right here. So the next thing we will do is to now go to the PC and see if we can connect to the router. So let's get this thing, get out of here. Then open the PC by clicking on it, and we can test the connection between the PC and the router. And this is going to fail right away if you try to do it right now. But just to show you something that you might try to do is just go ahead and going into command prompt and going ping 192.168.1.1, and it is going to fail. And I will tell you why. So if I go fast forward quicker, it all requests timeout. The reason for that is we just configure the modem, but we didn't, the router. We just configure the router, but we didn't actually configure the IP for the PC itself. So what we need to do on the desktop tab of the PC, before we start checking the connection to the router, is to go to the IP configuration. In here we need to put 192.168.1.10 and then 255.255.255.0, because that's what it tells you here, and make sure that is configured that way. And then the default gateway, what should be the default gateway? It doesn't tell you. The lab doesn't tell you what should be the default gateway, but we know the router has a IP address of 192.168.1.1 on G00 interface. That should be the default gateway. We know that, right? So make sure, even though the lab doesn't explicitly tell you that, you should know as a IT student that it is 192.168.1.1, because that's the default gateway for that interface G00, and we need to set that thing up on your PC. Now if you go back into the command prompt and repeat that same ping 192.168.1.1, which is pinging this particular router, and press enter, it should work. We now at least ping our router. So next thing what we need to do is we need to see if our SSH connection to this router is working before we remove this console cable. You can start removing this console cable if you want, but then that's not the proper way of doing it. So let's go and check if our SSH is working. On your command prompt, type SSH space -L for logging, and remember the username is Sanuja and it's 192.168.1.1, because that's the router interface, and we're gonna see SSH is gonna work. It's gonna ask for a password, and it is Cisco. Press enter, and it tells me the banner Net IT Geeks R1. We have our SSH fully configured and working on this router. We can go in further. Let's delete this console cable. So let's go ahead and delete the console cable just to prove it is SSH and there's no connection between the PC and the router other than the SSH connection itself. So we can even go into the router. If I go en, it's going to ask for password. Remember, password is Cisco. Enter config t, and here we go. We are inside the router using SSH. So I have configured SSH on the router. I can ping the router. I also can connect through SSH to the router. So router configuration is done. And the next thing I need to do is do the same configuration options to the switch, except there is a slight difference at the very end. I will tell you what it is. So let's go ahead and do the switch. Again, we're going to go to connections here, and we're going to pick a console cable, connect the console cable to the switch console connection, click on the PC, then we will click on terminal because we are connecting through a console cable. So we're going to click terminal, click OK, and we are now inside the switch 1. Again, the switch 1 is just boot up, nothing else has been done, and you see all the Cisco, pretty much the bootloader happening up here. And we're going to click enter, and we are inside the switch now through this PC. So again, this is a console connection, not the SSH connection, because the SSH connection has not been configured on the switch yet, and we are going to configure now. First thing we're going to do again, we're going to run through the instructions on part 3. These are the instructions right here. You can see it on the left hand side of your screen. And I'm going to go a little bit faster here, except for the part where we are going to do something different with this switch. So en config t, we are in the configuration. We're going to change the switch name to SW1 because that's what the instruction tells me to do. And we're going to go banner motd, sorry, spelling mistake, and we're going to do net it geeks SW1 because this is our switch 1. Press enter, and then I'm going to go ahead and do the VLAN configuration. Now, we didn't have VLANs on the router, but we do need VLAN on the switch in order to get the SSH working. And it tells you on this table, on the network address map table, what the VLAN needs to be configured, how it should be configured, right? So the VLAN, I'm going to go INT, which is internet interface VLAN 1. So right here, INT VLAN 1, and I'm going to press enter. Now I'm in the VLAN configuration. I'm going to go IP ADD, which is the IP address 192.168.1.2 because that's what it tells me to do in this table, and subnet mask 255.255.255.0. Press enter, and we need to put the VLAN online, so we're gonna go no shut, and it gonna gives you a command line message right here saying the interface for VLAN 1 is up. So now the VLAN is working. We're gonna go we can exit out of this, and we're gonna go enable secret Cisco. Press enter, and we're gonna go line console 0, and we're gonna go password Cisco, enter, and we're gonna go exit out of this as well. Then we're gonna go username Manuja secret Cisco, enter, because that's the password they're asking us to use. And we're gonna go service password encryption, enter, because they want us to, you know, make sure that password is always remain encrypted, all password. And again, we're gonna go IP domain name Manuja, enter, and then we're gonna go crypto key generate, just like before, RSA, and then in here they want us to use 1024-bit because that's what it tells you here. Everything needs to be 1024-bit, and we're gonna press enter, and now it's working. I'm gonna go IP SSH version 2, enter, and then transport input transport input SSH. Sorry, 1 second, maybe exit out of this. I miss a few commands. Sorry about that. So what I need to do is basically I need to do line VTY. So line VTY, again we're gonna do 0 to 15, and we're gonna go transport input SSH logging local. So I forgot this one command middle here, that's why it got a little bit muddled up. So again, before start entering transport input SSH, you need to make sure that you do line VTY, because we are doing the line VTY. That part is important. Without that, you won't be able to do transport SSH login local, right? Because it's for those lines, right? Then we're gonna exit, and that's pretty much it. That's at this point this switch has been configured for SSH. So we're gonna exit out of this switch, And again, we will go back into the command prompt. And in here, this is the router part. We are now out of the router connection. We're gonna try to ping 192.168.1.2 and press enter. And if you fast forward a little bit, it will tell you that, see, go, it's working now. So I can go ahead and ping again, and it tells you it's gonna get a reply back from that switch. Now we have a connection to switch. What's the next thing we need to do? We need to try to do SSH connection. So again, for the SSH command, it's SSH-L. We are logging in with the SSH username Sanuja, IP address 192.168.1.2 this time, because we are getting into VLAN 1 of the switch 1, and we're gonna press enter. So password is Cisco, enter. It tells you the banner, net ID geeks SW1 en, password Cisco, enter, config T, and we are in the configuration of the switch. So now the SSH is also working in the switch itself. I can go ahead and delete the line console cable, and then if I go back in here, I can exit out of this. Let's maybe just not clear this. I'll do this. What I can do is I can either connect to the router or the switch. So switch is 192.168.2, but if I go -1, oh sorry, Cisco, I'm inside the router. If I exit out, and if I go 192.168.2 Cisco, I'm inside the switch. So I have configured SSH on router and the switch. I can ping the R1 and SW1 from the PC, and I was able to connect to R1 and SW using SSH. That means I have now completed this lab. I can simply close this window, delete that console cable, or even leave it there. It doesn't really matter for most professors. You save the file, and now you can submit that lab file and get full credit for it. So I did the lab live with you. So I made few mistakes, small mistakes at the very end I made, and I correct myself. That shows how it works. One thing that I need to make sure this switch works, that I didn't show you guys, is that if I go to the terminal, not the terminals, go to command prompt, and let's go into the switch. So we are inside the switch, en Cisco config T. We also need to make sure that we give IP default gateway of 192.168.1.1 for the switch. This command will make sure that the default gateway for the switch is also the same default gateway for the entire network. So that's something that I don't believe I did it earlier. So make sure that's at this point, that's the biggest one of the difference between configuring the router itself, because that's the gateway itself, and the switch. You need to enter IP default gateway 192.168.1.1. If you don't do that, you still maybe have the connection to SSH like you had it here, but that is that is not ideal in a way, because you need to have a default gateway for your switch as well. So keep that in mind. So that's everything for today. If you have any questions or concerns, please make sure to leave a comment. Until next time, please thumbs up this video and subscribe to my channel, and have a nice day.